Welcome everyone. In the last session we have discussed in detail the concept of IFRS. What are the objectives, needs, benefits of IFRS? And I believe you have gone through the Google site where the total number of IFRS standards that are issued by Iasb until now. Go through it and familiarize each of these standards. So next, let us go to the next area. International Accounting Standards, otherwise known as IAS. IAS means Indian Accounting Standards. Many of them have a doubt that IAS means Indian Accounting Standards, and some believe that it is International Accounting Standards. Some others believe that it is Indian Accounting Standard. So what is the reality behind that? First of all, for the time being, IAS means International Accounting Standards. So what is the accounting standards of India? Does it also known as IAS? The answer is no. IAS means International Accounting Standards. IAS doesn't have any relation with the Indian Accounting Standards. Usually, the Indian Accounting Standards is now known as INDAS. IND means Indian, AS means Accounting Standards. These standards are adopted by the companies in India and issued under the supervision of Accounting Standards Board, otherwise known as ASB. It was started in 1977. The Accounting Standards Board is a committee under ICAI. Before INDAS means Indian Accounting Standard. Now the Accounting Standards of India is known as INDAS. Before that, before the introduction of INDAS, the Accounting Standards of India was simply known as Accounting Standards. So remember, IAS means International Accounting Standards, and it doesn't have any relation with Indian Accounting Standards. Earlier, Indian Accounting Standards is simply known as Accounting Standards, and after the introduction of or convergence of Indian accounting standards or accounting standards of India with the international accounting standards, the new system of standard, that is INDAS, was introduced. So that is the concept. Earlier it is known as accounting standards, now it is known as INDAS, means Indian Accounting Standards, and IAS simply means International Accounting Standards. And INDAS is actually a convergence or adoption of accounting standards of India with the international accounting standards. I believe you have got the idea about that. Anyway, INDAS was formed after converging the Indian accounting standards with IFRS. So, what are international accounting standards? Again, coming back to the earlier one, IAS. So, what is meant by international accounting standards? We already gone through that area previously. Anyway, again let us discuss the same area. International Accounting Standards or IAS are older accounting standards issued by the International Accounting Standards Board, an independent international standard setting body based in London. The IAS was replaced in 2001 by International Financial Reporting Standards. See, you can visit the Google to know the recent IFRS standards that are issued and published until now. So please go through it. Previously we have shown the total number of IFRS standards, so go through that same site, or you can even visit the official page of the IFRS to know the existing number of IFRS standards. In the text, the number shown or the number published in your textbooks are outdated, and usually these IFRS standards are updated daily. So go through the official site to know the actual number of IFRS. International accounting is a subset of accounting that consider international accounting standards when balancing books. Anyway, I believe you have understand the concept of IAS and Indian AS. And you can even visit this www.iasplus.com to know the recent standards. Not only the recent standards, the total standard that are in operations. Next one, comparison table between IAS and IFRS. IAS means International Accounting Standards and IFRS means International Financial Reporting Standards. Earlier it was known as IAS, now it is known as IFRS. So let us go through the differences between these two set of standards. There are certain parameters for comparison, and first one, IAS means International Accounting Standards. I believe you all know what is meant by that. And IFRS means International Financial Reporting Standards. This was the oldest system. The standards of IAS were published between 1973 and 2001. I believe you know what happened after 2001. Until 2001, the standards released were known as International Accounting Standards, and right now also these IAS standards are in operations. Certain amendments have been made in some of the standards. So after the IAS that was published until 2001, after that it is now known as IFRS. And it started publishing from 2001. So if you go through the standards that is followed internationally, you will see two sets of standards, IAS and IFRS. So the thing is, any standards that are issued before 2001 is known as IAS, and any standards that are published after 2001 is known as IFRS. That is the only difference. The standards of IAS were issued by International Accounting Standards Committee, otherwise known as IASC. And after 2001, this International Accounting Standards Committee was dissolved and formed into International Accounting Standards Board. So, the IAS was introduced or issued by International Accounting Standards Committee, whereas the IFRS standards were issued by International Accounting Standards Board. That is the only difference. The IAS does not contain rules regarding identifying, measuring, presenting and disclosing of all non-current assets for sale. This is with regard to the specifications of International Accounting Standards, and in those accounting standards one of the main issue is that it doesn't have any prescribed rules or steps that has to be followed while dealing with non-current assets and with regard to their sale. There is no such information regarding what has to be done, what are the steps that has to be followed while dealing with non-current assets for their sale. Whereas IFRS is new and contains rules regarding identifying, measuring, presenting and disclosing all non-current assets for sale. The thing is, in IAS there is no specification regarding how these non-current assets can be sold. Whereas in IFRS there is no such issues. It has been updated to deal with all items relating to the financial transactions. Now, earlier, because these are the older standards, and there are total of 41 international accounting standards, whereas there are total of 17 IFRS standards. So kindly go through the home pages of these two sites. Even you can go for the IFRS site, or you can go for the International Accounting Standards Board's official site to see the total number of standards, or you can go through the Google to know what are the total International Accounting Standards and total IFRS standards. In one of the previous session we have gone through IAS standards as well as IFRS standards. And don't worry, if you go through it, majority of the standards may not be actually that are related to higher level of accounting. You may not get an idea about what is shown or what is written in that some of the standards, so don't worry about it. Go through it, familiarize what are the standards and what are the areas under which these standards are related. Familiarize all those areas. In case of contradiction, the principles of IAS are dropped, whereas in case of contradiction, the principles of IFRS are taken into consideration. The principles and rules with regard to IFRS is given more importance as refers to the various aspects that are prescribed in the IAS. That is the main differences between IAS and IFRS. So go through it. The thing is, in some of the text you may see that total of IAS may be 41 may be given. That will be correct because it is a older standards and it was issued until 2001. So usually the textbooks which you are going to refer or the textbooks in your hand might show the total number of IAS as correct, whereas IFRS may not be updated because IFRS are the recent standards that are followed worldwide and it keeps on updated on a random basis. So in a regular and routine basis it is being updated. So you have to refer the Google or the home site of the IASB, International Accounting Standards Board, because they are the one issuing or publishing IFRS. So go through it. So next let us go to the another area, International Financial Reporting Interpretations Committee, otherwise known as IFRIC. You can even visit this website to know the actual number of IFRIC interpretations issued until now. The IFRIC is the interpretative body of the International Accounting Standards Board, otherwise known as IASB. The members provide the best available technical expertise and diversity of international business and market experience relating to the application of IFRS standards. So that is the main duty of IFRIC. It actually acts as a supporting role for the International Accounting Standards Boards. And what is the main duty of IASB? Means International Accounting Standards Board. International Accounting Standards Board is the one that issues international standards. Now it is known as International Financial Reporting Standards. And IFRIC means otherwise known as International Financial Reporting Interpretations Committee that provide all sorts of technical assistance. Not only technical assistance, it provides all sorts of assistance with regard to technical assistance or with regard to financial aspects or with regard to international aspects. Whatever it is, it will provide all sort of assistance for the preparation and implementation of IFRS standards. And the constitution of IFRIC actually includes 14 voting members appointed by the trustees of the IFRS Foundation. IFRS Foundation is the one that take initiatives for the implementation of IASB and introduction of international financial reporting standards, etc. And the International Interpretation Committee, that is IFRIC, responds to the questions about the application of the standards and does other works at the request of the board. We have mentioned that it is the one that provides all sorts of assistance to the IASB. For what? For implementation and settling means a creation of new standards and publication of these standards. Actually all these work done by IASB, but IFRIC provides all sorts of assistance. So what are the main functions of IFRIC? Interpreting the application of IAS and IFRS to provide guidance on financial reporting issues. IAS means International Accounting Standards. It is an international standards. IFRS means International Financial Reporting Standard. These two standards are almost same. The only thing is any standards that were published before 2001 is known as IAS. Any standards published after 2001 is known as IFRS. That is only difference. And this IFRIC provide all sorts of guidance with regard to financial reporting issues for IAS as well as IFRS. IFRIC provide timely guidance on financial reporting issues that may not be specified or addressed in IAS and IFRS. Usually financial reporting issues may arise in IAS or IFRS. Sometimes the standards may not cover some of the areas that is relating to the accounting. And even those areas also dealt by IFRIC. In general, IFRIC will help Iasb with regard to IAS and IFRS relating to the any issues or problems, even if it is included in the standards or not. So that is the first and the important function of IFRIC. Next one, fulfilling duties and responsibilities with regard to IASB objectives and bring about convergence. That means IFRIC carries out all those duties with regard to IASB's objectives of working actively with national standard setters to bring about convergence of national accounting standards. We have learned that in present scenario there are international accounting standards, and all the accounting standards around the world that is adopted by different countries. Now the international body is trying to bring together or unifying all the accounting standards. That is known as convergence, and IFRIC assists IASB in bringing about convergence or adopting the national standards. National standards means standards of each country. For India, it is known as accounting standards of India. In Japan, there are certain set of standards. So for each country, there will be certain set of standards. So what is the purpose of IFRS? That is bringing together the accounting standards of various nations under a one and only unified system. That is the main concept of IFRS, and IFRIC helps the IASB in converging the standards of various nations. That is known as national standards. So bringing together all those national standards under one unified set of standards, which is known as IFRS. Publishing of draft and comments before finalizing an interpretation. While preparation means while discussion of how the standards are set by ASB, we have dealt those area in one of the previous classes. In that, one of the steps before implementing a standard is publishing of draft and collecting comments from the public. And publishing after clearance by the IASB, the draft interpretations for public comment and consider comments made within a reasonable period before finalizing an interpretation. Before finalizing a standard, a draft of the standard will be provided to the various study groups, or it may be published in the journals. Those standards before the finalization of standard is known as proposed draft or draft standard. Before finalizing those standard, it will be provided to the various study groups, or it may be provided to the public, or it may be published in the journals of the standard accounting standards board. So before finalizing a standard, publishing of draft, collecting the comments from the various study groups, all these activities are done by IFRIC also. Not only IASB, IFRIC also assists IASB in dealing those areas, because before finalizing a standard, there are many procedures with regard to that. There will be a lot of discussions between various accounting groups or various accounting professionals, and actually there is a lot of study work and homework will be there with regard to finalizing and implementation of a standard, and IFRIC also assists the IASB in dealing all those areas. That is the concept. And finally, reporting to the IASB and obtain its approval for final interpretation. In the previous set, we have discussed that before finalizing the standard, it may be provided to various study groups, and it will be provided to the public and may be published in the journals. And after collecting all the information, all the feedback from all these different groups, a final report may be prepared by IFRIC and it will be submitted to the IASB. And after analyzing those report, only a standard is finally approved and it will be published internationally. That is the procedure, and IFRIC helps the IASB in performing all these roles. So that is with regard to IFRIC, and let us go through the different IFRIC interpretations issued until now. IFRIC interpretations. Actually, these are not standards. It's a interpretation committee. IFRIC means International Financial Reporting Interpretations Committee, and until now there are a total of 23 IFRIC. IFRIC means interpretations published by the committee. There are 23 IFRICs. So go through each of these IFRIC, try to familiarize what is meant by IFRIC 3 or IFRIC 8 or anything like that. I know it is very difficult to by heart all these IFRIC's interpretations, but kindly go through all these IFRICs and try to familiarize the name, at least the names. I am not forcing you to study the contents of the IFRIC, but at least the total number of IFRICs and what are the names of each of the IFRIC. Actually, you have to go through each of these IFRIC and familiarize what is the meaning of each of these, but kindly go through it. If possible, you just go through each of these interpretations and try to find out or identify one or two sentences with regard to that, because if you come across a question like briefly explain IFRICs, you have to answer that. So if you go through these IFRIC and familiarize some of the headings and the content explanation, brief explanation of each of these IFRIC, it will be much better. So go through these IFRIC. Right now there are 23. In some of the texts you may see that IFRIC will be given 17 or it may be given 18 like that, but actually right now there are 23 IFRIC. So go through it. Next one component under IFRS is Standard Interpretations Committee, otherwise known as SIC. So it is the last content or component under IFRS. There are total of 4 components under IFRS. So remember that. Anyway, what is meant by SIC? It means Standard Interpretations Committee. So what is the role of Standard Interpretation Committee? It's in the heading itself, the role is specified. It means interpretations issued by Standard Interpretations Committee. So what is the condition or situation of SIC now? So before going into that, you need to know what was the activity or the purpose of implementing SIC. SIC, otherwise known as Standard Interpretations Committee, was a committee established under IFRS. For what? In order to interpret the accounting standards issued internationally. Interpretations of accounting standards were given by Standard Interpretation Committee till the formation of Iasp. So actually SIC is a committee that was formed before the implementation of Iasb. International Accounting Standards Board was a recent origin, and Standard Interpretations Committee was implemented even before that, and the main purpose of Standard Interpretation Committee means interpreting the standards published under IFRS. And so what is the situation of SIC now? Now the interpretation function is conducted by International Accounting Standards Board and IFRS Interpretations Committee. Now it is done by IFRIC. Before the implementation of Iasb and IFRIC, SIC was the one that interpret the standards issued by IFRS. Now the interpretations activities are done by Iasb and IFRS Interpretations Committee. So what are the objectives of Interpretations Committee? First one, to interpret the applications of International Accounting Standards, otherwise known as IFRS. I believe you know what is the difference between IAS and IFRS. The main activity of SIC was to interpret the standards issued by any of these two. Next one, to provide timely guidance on financial reporting issues that are not specifically addressed in IAS and IFRS. We have mentioned about the similar type of sentence previously. it will provide all sorts of assistance, not only regard to the standard issued by IAS or IFRS, but it also deals with all those issues that are not mentioned in the, or that do not comes under any of the standards. So it provides assistance with regard to any issues relating to a financial transaction, whether it is included in the standard or not. And not only that, it also undertakes other tasks at the request of IASB. IASB might be needing many other assistance, and whenever IASB wants some sort of assistance, SIC will provide assistance now also. So that is the main objectives of SIC, and these are the main components that comes under IFRS. So go through all these components. So before we going to wind up, let us go through what are some of the SICs. So these are some of the main SIC implemented until now. See, some of the interpretation that are issued from 1997 till 2001. There are a total of 33 SICs. And in some of your texts, it might show 7 or 8 SICs, and it may not be in chronological order. Some of the SIC may be missing. Anyway, actually there are 33 SIC until now. So go through all these SICs, familiarize each of these heads and the SIC number also. If you want further information regarding each of these SIC, you can Google it or you can search Wikipedia. Anyway, familiarize and update it with regard to each of these components. So go through it. If you have any queries with regarding to that, please do let me know.